my corporate life right now, organizational expectations often change. It can sometimes feel like I am leading a new team or a new company every year. One of my direct reports will replace me out of my job. And when that happens, will they be able to do it and do it even better than I did? Because if the answer is yes, then I am able to do my job as their talent developer. Your legacy is not built on individual achievement, but on principles you formalize to stabilize your team. We have spent 3 episodes moving from mindset to muscle, identifying the invisible killer, building our organizational frameworks, and surviving the Reconstruction era. But what do you do when the entire company or your organization feels a little unstable and unpredictable? You stop trying to fix the chaos and start building your own self sustaining system. So, in our final episode, we dive into the principles of my personal playbook. This is actually the core non negotiables or non negotiable rules I enforce to build a leadership legacy that runs itself and goes beyond me. And this is the ultimate lesson in leading boldly with everything around you is shifting. Hello, beautiful people. This is Love Ravina, 28-year-old corporate leader and public speaker who is still learning out loud. And welcome to the Love Ravina podcast, where I share my messy, beautiful journey. This is now finally our last episode 4, part 4 of our 4-part series, where I am sharing my final insights from Surfa and his book, UNIFY, Operating as One Cohesive Performance Unit. And in this episode, we focus on Chapter 11, Performance Playbook. And of course, my final core takeaways from this transformative series. So, we have established that in my corporate life right now, organizational expectations often change, right? And it can sometimes feel like I am leading a new team or a new company every year. Now, this constant external instability forces me to stop relying on top down directives and start building my internal personal playbook. So, Surfa in his book writes that he writes books he wish he had when starting out. And reading chapter 11 of the book actually made me realize that my playbook needed to be rooted in the principles that survive chaos. And so my personal core competency is strategic thinking and high execution. I move fast, but I've also learned that speed is useless if the system you build today will collapse tomorrow. And so, because of that, my ultimate test for any new idea, system, or any process I implement in my division has become this: will it last without constant direct supervision? Like, will there come a time that I will no longer be perpetually needed by my team? And if the answer is no, then I have only built another source of friction. It's very important. I'm not sure about you, okay? Especially leaders listening to this episode. It's very important that we as leaders focus on legacy, building legacy, meaning to say, focus on being not needed. Because I know that one of these days, one of my direct reports will replace me out of my job. And when that happens, will they be able to do it and do it even better than I did? Because if the answer is yes, then I am able to do my job as their talent developer, as someone who supported them in their journey. And so the playbook that I am mentioning is actually about defining the rules that ensure the answer is always yes. So let us unpack the core principles and the lessons again that make up my personal leadership playbook. So the first principle is to document, decide, and define. So this is like my non-negotiable communication. So this comes directly from learning that the painful cost of ambiguity and relying on verbal agreements, especially in an environment that is prone to high change and confusion. So my non-negotiable rules for my division are the following. 1, all requests must be documented in the official channel. 2, key decisions made in the meeting must be documented in the official channel immediately afterward. And 3, all interdepartment coordination must be sent to the dedicated coordination group chats. I know this sounds a little strict, but I tell you, this is not bureaucracy. Okay, this is a mechanism against chaos because documentation is the bedrock of accountability and sustainability. If it was not written down, it did not happen and it won't survive a year either. So, documentation is very important. The second principle is leading with self awareness. Again, I am a strategic thinker and a high execution individual. And so, meaning to say, my pace is generally much faster than most of my associates. I would say that. So, if I delegate a task the way I think, then I create intense, unnecessary pressure. And so my self awareness of my own wiring has changed how I delegate. First thing I do, I must always paint done, meaning to say, the finished product or the end goal must be clearly communicated to my teammates or to my team at the onset because this gives them a clear destination, even if their journey or their process is slower than mine. So before I delegate, I always tell myself, love, paint done. What does done look like? It's very, very important. Second, I communicate the reason or the purpose. I believe that our teams need to know the why to own the how. They need to understand why we need to do this, why I need to do this, and why did you choose me to do this? Because this taps in their motivation rather than just relying on compliance. It's a bit different when your team does things because they're motivated to do it and they want to do it versus they're forced to do it. And I tell you, it shows in their final output if they were simply forced or they did it because they wanted to. And that's a reality in leadership. You kind of have to learn how to make your team want to do the thing. Yes, it's a pretty tricky thing to do, but that is also very important. And lastly is I secure their commitment. I get their own commitment, like the timeline, for example, that they can finish a specific task or a project. And I need to hear that timeline from them because that is like their way of agreeing and that's their way of committing to a specific task or a specific project. So this hands the pace back to them because I always tell them, I need you to do this. When's the soonest that you can finish it? And so that is like prompting them to look at their priorities, look at their calendar, look at their ongoing responsibilities, and then estimate when they can finish something. It's very important because, again, that is an act of ownership. If a timeline, for example, comes from you, then you will feel more accountable to actually follow through and make it happen. And so ensuring the timeline based on their pace, based on their assessment, is actually realistic of their wiring and not just mine. And so what I realize is I need to lead with support instead of speed. So you might be wondering, but what if the timeline that they gave me is a bit far, right? Like it's not really realistic for me as a leader because I need to present it to the management or I need to use their output and so on, right? So if that happens, you compromise and meet halfway. You ask them what they're currently working on right now, and then you work with them in terms of maybe deprioritizing other tasks so they can prioritize the delegated tasks, the new delegated tasks. That's like an arrangement that you can make with your team. And the final test is that formalizing the Trinity filter. So in the previous episode, we built our team or my team's holy trinity: resource ability, tutor relationship, and associate morale, to again use that as a filter in any external chaos or demand. And so my biggest action prompted by reading this book is to formalize this holy trinity for the next quarter of the fiscal year. So this means I will document and communicate these three pillars to all of the managers. And then second is make them the non-negotiable criteria for our decision making. So every decision that will now pass this test. So every decision will again now pass this test. And this moves the concept from theory to a systematic defense strategy, ensuring that all of our time and effort again is aligned and spent on building and at the same time defending our island of clarity. Because this is the only thing that I can truly control. So, my biggest takeaway in this four-part journey, from recognizing that misalignment is the invisible killer to building my team's Holy Trinity and my personal playbook as well, is about taking ownership of my environment, especially when the environment itself is a little unstable. If I had to summarize the UNIFY series into one core sentence for any young, ambitious leader struggling with instability, it would be this: in the chaos of corporate life, the greatest leadership is found in building and defending your own island of clarity. And so, because of that, my challenge to you is to identify the one non negotiable principle, whether about communication or self awareness, that you will document and formalize in your playbook next week to create your island of clarity in your domain. Focus on what you can control. Control what you can control. So, to sum up everything, the final lesson of UNIFY is that your legacy is not built on individual achievement, but on principles you formalize to stabilize your team. My playbook is actually built on document, decide, and define, and leading with self aware delegation. The legacy that I'm committing to creating is again that island of clarity in my domain, formalizing my team's Holy Trinity filter and making it the non negotiable standard for all decisions moving forward. Leadership in chaos is about defining what you will protect and what you will ground yourself in. So, there you have it, everyone. If this four-part series resonated with you, make sure to follow the Love Ravina podcast, where I talk about real conversations on leadership, public speaking, and growth. And again, I want you to have your hands on the copy of the ebook UNIFY. And so we can give you access to the ebook. Simply leave a comment, UNIFY, in this post or in this episode, and we will send the copy right to you. And since this is now the last episode of this four-part series, I'd also like to once again extend my gratitude to my mentor, Sir Fa, Mr. Florentino A. Hernando, for sharing with me your book, Sir Fa UNIFY, and for generously sharing your knowledge and your experience with me. Please do know that I learned a lot from you, and I'm still learning a lot from you as well. And I can't wait to see you hopefully soon. I don't know when, but we'll see. We'll see each other again very, very soon. So yeah, that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me in this four-part series. And please look forward to more conversations or more discussions on leadership and public speaking. Until next time, let us keep showing up, speaking up, and leading boldly. Bye.